All right, Governor, just last week, a teenage suspect was killed after police say he committed a crime with about 6 or 7 other teenagers. What is the biggest issue when trying to address juvenile crime, and how are you working with lawmakers to try and stop this?
Well, I've been trying to work with lawmakers to stop sort of choosing one piece of this to nibble at since 2019. You have to address it all the time for all populations and age groups, every single session. I think it might have been 8 teenagers involved, 6 or 7 that they've identified and or in custody. But at some point in New Mexico, before I was governor, the body of sort of social evidence said, and then I'll tell you what we're doing about it, that you cannot detain juveniles or teenagers. You just can't do it. That you put them in a detention, they get out, and they're worse. And when you're talking about 20 kids, what they should have done is figured out what we could do better in detention. Whatever that is, solve that problem where it is. Instead, other states did the same, but they course corrected. We did not. We went over here and said no child, no juvenile can be detained for any crime, including murder. So now I've got about 343 statewide right here at capacity and then some in detention. Because we weren't detaining anyone, you don't have any detention centers. So we're at capacity. Those young boys and girls are in detention for murder. I want everyone to be really clear. You just talked about shooting, murder. They're in detention for murder. These kids cannot not be detained. So let's fix what goes on in detention, but they must be detained. 2, you have to change the children's code, because when they made this decision about not detaining kids, they embedded it in state statute so that no judge has a legal tool to do anything about it. Last thing, what message do you think that sends to kiddos? They can do whatever they want. They can steal, they can take your car, they can kidnap you, they can brandish firearms. And as part of that, what message does it give felons who are in possession of firearms as adults? Recruit kids to do your crimes.
Well, one real quick follow-up. Are we at capacity because of the number of beds or because of the ratio to officers to underage?
It's nothing to do with officers for arrests. This has to do with we stopped having detention beds. Because why would a county pay for a facility? Because it's their responsibility to have these facilities under the way in which we design who runs jails and detention facilities in New Mexico. Why have one or pay the money for staff if nobody went in there? So it is all of that. So I want the juvenile code changed. I think Sam Bregman is spot on. The only reason, which I think most New Mexicans don't know, is the only reason they're detained now is what? Because if we have state law that says you can't, how is it that we're detaining kids primarily in Albuquerque but statewide right now? I'll tell you why. You didn't ask me, Doug. We're doing it because I put out an emergency public health order that says you must, because crime and gun violence is a public health emergency. That is the only reason we're doing it. I don't have that public health emergency out anymore. We're sort of doing it cooperatively because the police all agree that it's an emergency. But if they don't change the law, how quick will I get a lawsuit challenging whether or not any judge can detain a juvenile? So it's critical that felon in possession gets passed and that we do the juvenile code changes. We must do them. Every 3 days, I have a kid who shoots at someone, and far too often someone is critically injured or loses their lives. Every 3 days. It's the highest in the country.
And Governor, sticking kind of on the crime issue, which I know has been a major focus for you, data shows that New Mexico's violent crime rate would still be above the national average, even without, including Bernalillo County, but certainly it would be a lot lower if you don't factor in Bernalillo County. How much is Albuquerque really driving this discussion?
Albuquerque's the biggest city, so by virtue of just that, your risks are exacerbated here because you've got more people, more retail, more drugs, more stuff going on. But all you have to look is that the violent crime increase in Las Cruces, in Alamogordo, in Raton, in Santa Fe, in Espanola, in Taos, and it is a statewide problem. And I actually, which your question is spot on and valid. It's been far too easy, I think, for policymakers to say, look, just get Albuquerque to get their act together. You can figure out the jail and, I can do a public health order. That's not the way that you deal with crime. I had to do it because I can't get the legislature to do responsible work. So I was left with no other tools or options. It saves kids' lives too. Kids in New Mexico die because of gun violence. It's not the only reason, but it is the overwhelming reason we lose kids in New Mexico. It's outrageous. It's a statewide problem. You had a 66% increase in Las Cruces alone by a place where a lawmaker has said repeatedly, there is no crime in Las Cruces. Well, that is not what the data shows, and it certainly isn't what the mayor says, and it's certainly what the county commissioners aren't saying, and it's certainly not what the op-ed by the 2 new city councilors suggests. And Chief Story will tell you it is not true. Crime is a serious problem there. It's a serious problem everywhere because we have no guardrails anywhere, and it will move. And we've done more than a dozen or exactly a dozen town halls, and in every single community, no matter how big, from Gallup to Raton, crime is a significant issue for everyone in that community. 1/3 of New Mexicans have been affected by crime. 1/3.
Crime is what I hear about the most, and also our children's education, the NAEP scores, worse than the last time. So you're in the middle of your second term, Democratic governor, overwhelming Democratic legislation. People want to know, why haven't you led your party to fix this?
Well, if I could answer that, my party would be in the White House about leading anyone's party. There are some interesting issues that I feel good about exposing to the state of New Mexico, which underscores, pardon the pun about scores, and is the reason I firmly believe that education is so hard to address. I'm going to start with the political problem. You got a lot of former educators and superintendents who aren't interested in changing anything. And I don't know if you've been to an education committee, but I'd rather go to Senate Judiciary and debate crime bills. And if viewers don't know what that means, they don't even take votes. All right, they don't pass any bills out of there. And you must get them through that committee, or I don't get something to sign upstairs. All right, so the only committees that are tougher are the House and Senate education committees. That has to change. I think it's unethical and a huge conflict of interest for people from those areas particularly. Maybe you're still teaching at one of the schools that has the lowest achievement scores in the state. How are you making decisions about budgets and potential modifications? So I'm struggling with that. 2, we don't teach teachers how to be teachers. Now, that was identified. Again, it's like the public health order. I'm trying to figure out why, after $1.5 billion, new training, new coaching, new buildings, new stuff, why? I'm going to do crime really quick. Because it was the same with crime. We added new police officers. We put almost $2 billion into cars, equipment, shot detectors, crime labs, and yet no one's arrested. So something's not right. So we figure out that I've got a problem in the judicial system. I have a problem in juvenile detention. I have a problem in jails. And frankly, I had to then create a state system to fix it because I couldn't get policymakers, which is your question, to fix it. The same is true institutionally in public education. So now we won't certify any education department at any university that doesn't require the science of reading. It's mind-numbing, the fighting I have to do with those certifications with regents and presidents of universities. I have to check every 10 seconds. 2, I retrained every educator currently in K through about mid-school. The second I walk out of that classroom, most of those schools in a re-review aren't teaching the science of reading.
Well, the question.
But here, the question is, why can't
you, the governor, do something about
I
this?
have
You're
no
the governor.
power over schools. In the same way, I can't tell judges what they should sentence, nor can I tell a police officer who to arrest. And frankly, here's what I think the state should do about it. And I've said it every year. Not quite like crime in 19 and 20, because it took a minute to figure out, I did away with the high stakes testing. We did more after school programming. We dealt with food and with budgets and raises for teachers and all the things that everyone, and I agreed, still agree, were foundational problems in our education system. And yet, nothing changed. So now I got to figure out why. Well, if they're not going to teach the things that are evidence-based, we're not going to get there. The state doesn't allow me to do anything, even to take over a school. Have you seen what I have to do with a school board in order to do that? Do you know that I can't see how the budgets are actually utilized at a school level? Neither can the legislature. So they put it in a thing called the SEG for your voters. That's the State Equalization Guarantee, and its intention is the money should follow a student. That's basically what it means. State dollars follow the student. That money doesn't go to the students or inside the classroom. It goes to administration, and right now schools have about 40% of that money sitting in a savings account instead of actually doing special education, reading, math. It's mind-numbing. I think the legislature should give a governor a lot more authority, and then when people are really upset about education, go to your governor. But we literally have no power. Now, I'm not going to give up. I'm a fighter. That's why we're going to do literacy ourselves, 11% increase. It's why we're going to do math ourselves. It's why we're going to do tutoring all year long. It's why we're going to use the Guard and other folks. I'm not messing around, because if I don't do it that way, I'm afraid that we won't see the kinds of shifts, including another 50 million that goes to tribes to do that tutoring themselves. One-on-one tutoring will make the difference. And then I hope New Mexicans say, why aren't the schools more accountable? I would love that help. Crime and education. Some schools are doing better, but far more are doing worse. Last thing, because I think it's really valuable. The NAEP scores aren't a really very effective reflection either of how we're doing. That doesn't mean if we were using more modern, current data sets that we would be number 1 or number 30 or number 42. I want to be number 1. Every governor should want that in their public education system. But this scoring system's also antiquated, which means it's hard to figure out what you do to fix the gaps in the context. And I promise this is the last thing. We lose kids during the summer. We have a 6% slide. Post-COVID, that's been worse. And again, if I'd had a playbook and knew exactly what COVID is or isn't, maybe we'd have made other decisions about kids in school. But I didn't have it. When I thought kids might die, I was tough. And I, again, looking back is easy. Looking forward, hard. That scoring system, I think, needs to change so that I know exactly, and then I need the tools to hold schools accountable. But I'm in them a whole lot more often, and I have Tiger teams right now, not quite taking over a school, because I just told you that's not really something I can do. I mean, if a sexual predator's in there, I can't, literally, that's it. So we're in these Tiger teams because we must stop failing our children in New Mexico. It's outrageous.
Or Governor, in your State of the State, you said you need to hold repeat offenders, violent offenders accountable. We've all heard the term revolving door. A
Yep.
suspect goes behind bars, is released, reoffends. What laws are you trying to enact to make the system stronger and keep people behind bars? Because we all hear the judges, the DA saying, we're trying, but we can't keep them there. Especially, NBC is only 40% capacity on average. So there are beds.
I'm starting to
There's
like
room.
you. That is exactly true. We have fewer people in jail today than we did a decade ago, and crime is up. Because you couldn't book, officers arrest, people are right back out. That's not an excuse for officers. I actually bristle about that. You didn't do that. But when officers say to me, why? Why bother? Because they're selling fentanyl to a kid or a gun. Arrest them. But it is true, they are right back out. It's called competency. So New Mexico judges, based on the constitutional change, that's how it sort of got started, made the determination, and I voted for that, and I believe in that constitutional provision, which is you shouldn't go to jail because you're poor. But you should be in jail if you're a violent repeat offender. This seems like an easy standard, certainly to me, and I'm not a judge, but it seems easy. Well, apparently it hasn't been, because 18,000 cases since 2017 have been dismissed because of competency. Better. Because for drugs and mental health issues, which every single defendant comes in and every single PD says they have a drug issue or an alcohol issue or a mental health issue, it's dismissed. Then they don't commit you to any kind of program. It was just a study that said 80% of people on the streets who need services, so that's a combination of those two populations, will not accept services. And even if they do, they don't stay in any of these behavioral health treatments. So we have beds. Nobody stays, nobody goes. So these two things have allowed this revolving door, and criminals also know it. You will not be held accountable. Now, earnestly, I agree with the DAs. There are tools, and you're going to hear some lawmakers, including the lawmaker at Senate Judiciary, say we have tools. But if they don't use them, take away discretion. Because if they've had them and they didn't use discretion, I'm even more appalled. Their number one job is to keep New Mexico safe if you're a judge. That's your job. You're failing at it. So I want minimum sentencing. I want new sentencing laws. I want pretrial detention. I want felons in possession to have a floor. They don't have a floor for minimum time served. If I have one more person say to me, well, there's no evidence that it's a deterrent. Frankly, I think we're seeing that deterrence and punishment may not be the thing. But I'll tell you this, if you're in jail longer, you aren't giving more guns to teenagers. That's enough deterrent for me. You're not on the streets with a firearm. Stop the revolving door. Pretrial detention is really hard. I need the public. Felon in possession, also really hard. I don't understand it. We're like one of the last states in the nation to really keep doing this. I think other issues, shooting from a car, we'll get enhanced penalties. I think for fentanyl, we're going to get those enhanced penalties for drug dealing resulting in injury or death. I think we're going to get commitment and competency. Doug, I think that's going to get over the finish line. I am a little nervous that in the Senate they'll water it down. So I have a lot of work to do, but I've made it really clear, and I'm going to compliment the legislature. You better give me a robust package. We have to have it. My number one job is keeping people safe, and I can't get the legislature to meet me even at 10% here. So I want a lot in this session. I've introduced more than 30 bills, and as I talk to you, when it all rounds out, you'll have, if you count budget provisions that deal with crime, you'll have 150 things out there. There better be a huge percentage on my desk. They're committed to an omnibus by the halfway through point, but I don't know exactly what that means. Racketeering, human trafficking, some of the fentanyl bills, I think are easier for them. I want felon in possession and I want pretrial detention, and those are heavy lifts. I admit that, but the public could help me here.
You mentioned, behavioral health and
Yep.
Obviously mental health treatment, substance abuse, kind of part of that whole crime approach. I was curious, there's a package of bills in the Senate, that's been introduced that would shift a lot of the oversight to the courts away from the executive branch. Have you kind of looked into those bills, and do you have any kind of thoughts on whether you
I worry
support them?
about that. And again, the courts need more tools. So again, do your job, use the tools that you have, and to the public, they can't lobby for these bills. And I agree with that. That creates an unobjective fact finder. So we can't have that. So if you're wondering why they're not lobbying for changes, they're meeting their constitutional requirements. I'm all right with that. But to take an administrative arm of the courts and tell them to stand up behavioral health programs doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I'm proud that the legislature wants to do a $1 billion trust fund. I mean, their commitments about where money should go, I think, is spot on. I think we'll negotiate. I think that the administrative office of the courts need navigators. They need to know what diversion courts and systems. They need to be involved in helping us with better sentencing guidelines through the Sentencing Commission. We need to really understand best practices for both veterans and people who are unhoused. But I need the healthcare community standing up and expanding that footprint. I asked for $100 million. We're seeing a lot of increases. We have the highest behavioral health reimbursements in Medicaid in the country. We're seeing improvement. But unless you can do commitment and danger to self changes, you won't even get people into those programs. So they need to focus there. The legislature has $140 million that would come to the executive branch. So I think my $100 million is expected to be embedded in there. I'm very optimistic that we'll get to right sizing the court's role, the hospital's role, the beds, so treatment inpatients' role, the Veterans Hospital's role, the HMO's roles, public health's roles, and I think that with $1 billion, you will set a signal to the country, particularly now, that New Mexico's a place where we're going to fully reimburse you for your cost to deliver these services.
Am I correct in understanding that you opened the door of the idea of a court mandating mental health or substance abuse treatment
Yes.
as a sentence, and that you're not completed your sentence until you have completed successfully the program?
Well, if you really are, and there are people who that standard is, it's an accurate standard. They're not competent to stand trial. Well, then you have to restore competency. That means you need treatment. Here's what we're doing now. They're released to the streets. These same, of that 18,000 number I gave you, well more than 5,000 are serious crimes: kidnapping, rape, attempted murder, trafficking, guns, horrific crimes. It's about 3,500 people. We know who they are. Why would you release that person into your neighborhood 40 times a year? 40 times a year, every year. What are we doing? You restore competency by doing treatment. And we're showing the legislature that judges who have used tools, they're too narrow, but they've used tools that exist, have actually had successful treatments by committing someone to the Behavioral Health Institute in Las Vegas for 9 months, and a person come right out of that succeeding as a community member and also doing the time that they needed to do for the crime that they committed. Both. That's the end result we want. Stop the crime, restore competency, give people a second chance at life once they're accountable by giving them the treatment and therapies they need. But they're not going to go on their own. Need both.
One that's kind of shifting gears a little bit. I know you were in Washington, D.C. for a few days for meetings recently, and obviously there's been a lot happening with the new administration there. What would you say to
I've noticed.
New Mexicans who are concerned or frightened about some of the changes and things that the Trump administration is pursuing, and maybe feel threatened by some of that?
It is a really hard issue to grapple with because we have a U.S. Supreme Court that's basically said unequivocally that the commander-in-chief, the president, that he or she can do whatever they want to. Okay, that's not my reading of the Constitution, but I'm not a member of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they made that decision. There's no liability. You're completely immune. So that was licensed to do whatever you want, when you want, how you want. The U.S. Constitution is also very clear that we don't use the military enforcing borders in this way. You pass different laws, and they're doing that. So people, I will tell you, are really, I'm going to do both at kind of a light touch. They're spun up about everything, right? My phones are ringing off the hooks. Today they're worried about both, privacy and if they're going to get their Social Security checks. Parents who have really sick kids, and there are many of them in the state. Now, this isn't spun up. This is a real issue. Are wondering if their kids are going to get life-saving medication and access to vaccines. It's a good question. I get lots of immigration calls. This is a state like every state with a lot of mixed status families, a lot of folks who are working in places that we need. And again, it's a difficult area, is it not? Because it's not legal. Don't have them, you can't grow food. You can't have anyone working in a nursing home. You don't have people working in hospitals. I don't know if you've been to a hospital lately, but we don't have enough nurses and techs. Nearly 8,000 openings for nurses. You can't recruit nurses legally in this administration anymore from the Philippines or the Dominican Republic or anywhere. And if we don't recruit those folks and use immigration tools to bring them over, I will never fill any of those 8,000. That's a bit of an exaggeration. We're graduating our own, but not at that pace. All right, so people are legitimately worried. So here's what I am doing. One, the legislature and I are working on some strategies with some resources to have lawyers at your personal disposal, because the AG can only represent the state, right? And these issues broadly. And he's doing that. Every state's AG, every Democratic state not a single Republican state that I'm currently aware of is challenging the unconstitutionality of any of this, or worried that if you abolish education, that's 10% of your funding. In New Mexico, it's more like 30% of her funding. It's massive. It's billions. All right, so this is a problem. So we're going to make sure that you have access to lawyers, right? Because legal tools are very powerful because you can get stays. We can manage the chaos until we know what it really is. Because my personal opinion is, based on the last Trump administration, is that it's to distract us. Do 100 executive orders a day, and then you guys figure out which ones you can cover. Then figure out if you think you know, or we do know, or we don't know, or what someone's opinion is about what it means or doesn't mean, and how long it stays, and what Congress will do or not do, and what the courts will do, and whether it'll be a district court or an appeals court in the federal system, and then how long it takes to get to the U.S. court. He's going to do that every day for 100 or 200 days. And we won't know how it all shakes out for months. But in the meantime, don't panic. Do not think the state will not provide those core, serious, direct, life-saving services to you. I will make sure we do. And 3, on immigration, we'll do more to make sure that you can get a private resource. And I'm going to spend a little more time myself when I can at the border so I can see what's going on, because we really don't know. There are allegations that there's 150 DOD personnel there. I don't think that's accurate. I think they're coming. It is true they're being trained. It is true they were at Fort Bliss being trained. I don't know where they're being deployed. I don't think it's constitutional to deploy those folks. Yes, I've always had the Guard at the border dealing with crime and drug interdiction. They're not moving. I do more for criminal activity and surveillance and fentanyl detection. Count me in. But you're going to go to a school and you're going to walk out a custodian and a 5-year-old? We're going to do everything in our power to prevent that in hospitals. But it's challenging. And I want New Mexicans to know I'll fight for you. But it's a challenging time, and we're just going to have to stick together and trust each other. But we've got 6 months of a roller coaster ride at least.
Going back to what you said a few moments ago, Governor, about every 3 days you've got a case of a juvenile with a gun or firing a gun. Are they getting them from the home? Are they simply buying them online with these codes that they use? What are you trying to attack the most?
All of the above, but yes, they're doing it online. They're converting them with 3D printing. Felons are using them to illegally purchase firearms. Unfortunately, it's far too easy, which is another reason we don't want you to be able to get a firearm until you're 21. We have another bill because, you don't do detention. We don't do there's no crime. So when you're 18 and you've committed a series of gun crimes under our current situation, none of that shows up in the federal database because you don't have a conviction here. Well, we're going to change that. So you're arrested, there's a conviction, you're already, all that data from arrest, the incident gets reported to the federal database. So you try to go get a firearm at 18, you're not going to get one. So we're going to curb that. But they are selling these online, which is another reason, learning is critical. But I got a safety standard not having cell phones in the schools. We need to minimize what's going on the dark web. These kids are very sophisticated. It's horrifying what is happening. They're getting guns from everywhere, anywhere, and far too many circumstances we are not taking firearms out of a home where we legitimately should under current law, like the Extreme Risk Protection Order. And I'll have to say, I'm a little exasperated that it took 6 years to get law enforcement to be supportive here. 6 years. I get it. These are really complex, hard issues. And when the internet tells you to make it simple, you either believe in the Second Amendment or you don't. Okay? We believe in the Second Amendment, which gives us a constitutional right to possess a firearm. But that doesn't mean that people who were never intended to have a firearm, people who are criminals, people who have serious mental health issues, people who are suspected and being investigated of domestic violence, and we have one of the highest suicide rates by firearms in the country. There are tools that the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, through the Supreme Court says you can use. We don't ever take those guns in legitimate circumstances. Farmington, Clovis, Las Cruces, Santa Fe. Well, for the first time, all the sheriffs, all the DAs, all the police chiefs are saying we need to be able to report. We need it to have more clarity that we can take a firearm into possession. I will take it. We need broadened, and then I need every jurisdiction to use the tools that they have. But how would I hold a police jurisdiction accountable? Can't. How would I hold a DA accountable for not prosecuting a single misdemeanor so I can get to an organized retail crime, which we passed? I can't. I don't have any of that power. And so I have a lot of power. Thank you, New Mexicans. Those public health orders are really valuable and have saved a lot of lives. I do not use those lightly. But I don't have the power to tell a school to improve their rankings or their outcomes, or they won't get any money, or they'll get taken over, or they'll get a tiger team, or they'll get something else, or I'll make the district smaller. I can't even make them do good food. I funded it all. Have you eaten at a school? Have any of you? I have. It's embarrassing. Right here at APD, it's embarrassing what we're doing. And I funded them. I funded them to buy supplies for families. Why are families spending $300 or $500? I don't know. I can't see their budgets. I can ask them to show it to me. They don't have to. I can't fire a DA. I can't fire a police chief. I can't fire a mayor. I guess by the same token, they can't fire me very readily either. We need a system of good checks and balances that are fair, that aren't political in nature, that cause us to all be sharing data and investigations. There is a bill that's going to pass that does that. You know, we didn't do ballistics for firearms in this state until I was a governor. We didn't share any data. We didn't do any crime labs. And I'm really sorry for all of us that somehow, because we were nibbling at the edges and we did all prevention for a decade and all crime for a decade, and then you abandoned crime and then all prevention for a decade, this whiplash has put New Mexico in a really fragile state. Last thing I want to say to viewers, it's not too late, or listeners. It is not. Albuquerque's going to be tougher. 5 years, 7 years, you should see immediate changes with a lot of these bills. Other communities we can clean up in a year. I mean that. But we all got to be doing it together, and we have to own it's not an Albuquerque problem, and even if it was, you have to have statewide laws so that all the judges are doing the same. Otherwise, that law would be overturned. You can't just have an Albuquerque judicial system. So we have to do this together, and the legislature has to stop being risk adverse. They have to take we're on fire, call 911. And I think they're there. I'm not going to get everything, and maybe the public doesn't even think all of my ideas or the legislators' ideas are the right ideas. But for the first time in well more than a decade, you can't talk to a legislator on either side of the aisle without them talking about public safety as a crisis, and they're going to get at this. And in 19, would any legislator say that to you? Maybe a couple Republicans. No one would. So it's taken far too long to get here. But by golly, our train has arrived. And so I need everyone to board and be ready to make sure that we're clear about where we're headed next.
So the legislature's here, you're on this side with the district attorneys and
Yep.
the sheriffs and people like that.
Yep.
And over here, we have the defense attorney bar
Mm-hmm.
and people like that. How do you move that legislature away from them and presumably their money
Right.
and towards you? Well,
I'm doing it, right? If the legislature's saying they're going to send me an omnibus public safety package, winning, is it everything I want? I don't even know what's in it yet. The defense bar, you make a very good point. I think the politics has gotten way too powerful in ways that I think, and this is my opinion, I don't have the data, I could get it, so maybe I will. The defense bar, even in retention elections, can make judges very nervous. There's still an election. Look, the federal courts in many ways have it right. They do pretrial detention. They have minimum sentencing guidelines. They have lifetime appointments. They don't let the defense bar or the plaintiff's bar direct where they go. Very clear They don't get as many overturned cases. They don't have the same kind of discretion. I would say that most Americans feel like if there's a U.S. Marshal or there is a federal prosecution by a U.S. attorney or the FBI is bringing charges, I think most New Mexicans and most Americans go, woof, that's serious, right? You do that. When they say that you're going to bring it in state court, so why wouldn't we use a system that people know is accountable, that doesn't have these political biases? It's not a perfect system, but I would like to see more of those federal aspects embedded in New Mexico. But we are winning, but here's where we are. We're leading in the race. It's a horse race. We're coming around that home stretch, and it's going to be a photo finish. So I need New Mexicans. Call your legislator. Call my office. Engage online. No hate speech. Don't be angry. Don't be partisan. But talk about what's going on in your life and your family. Make sure they know that we all care about public safety. And the only people in New Mexico who can fix that by changing the laws that are plaguing the revolving door are the legislators. I can't make or write law, nor can I tell judges what to do.
You mentioned during your State of the State address some changes to CYFD, kind of some more independent oversight or accountability measures. I think a lot of New Mexicans have just, heard so many terrible stories about coming out of that department and terrible tragedies involving children. Do you think some of those steps go far enough to kind of address some of the issues at CYFD?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't done them, so I don't know. We're a bit entrenched as a state, all right? So the debate has also been all or nothing. So for example, and again, this is where the state has accountability issues. So everyone should own where they are. I'm responsible for CYFD. Goodness knows I've asked for a number of different leaders. I have raised hell about what we're doing and not doing, and that is exactly what people should expect, and I don't think that we're doing enough. So I want things that I think, based on what other states do, based on what foster families tell me they need, grandparents raising grandchildren, these are the things that I think move the needle the quickest and the most effectively. One, we never fund CYFD. So it's kind of like immigration law. It's a delicious political thing because governors are accountable. So both parties can use that as a whipping environment for governors. Okay, fair enough. But how does that help a kid? So you want me to deal with backlogs, which we have, and you want us to have more social workers, which we need. And you want us to do more home visits, which are critical. But you're not going to fund that? So right now, I need minimally $26 million. And then after I put that in my budget, a judge said to meet the behavioral health needs of our most challenged families and kiddos, I need more like $35.5 million. All right? I believe that, Judge. Okay. Well, the legislature isn't going to give it to us. And where they will give us money, it's in a new savings account that's not recurring. You know how hard it is to hire people? Hey, Doug, would you like to work for about 6 months? I can pay you, I think. We'll have to see what the legislature does. No promises. You can't be in a permanent position. Here's what everyone says. No thanks. I mean, we're just about to lay off, apparently, all these federal employers. You need stability in your family. People don't do that. It's hard enough to get a social worker. Fund CYFD. You don't mean that you want us to be more accountable if you won't fund that department. All right, so I am hoping they will come to their senses, both parties. 2, none of the services that really get at where we have risk. CARA, that is the acronym for a program in statute that allows CYFD to engage with families who have a child that's drug addicted. So we find out about those largely from the hospital, but it can actually happen a bit later in a school. You can have a kid that clearly is having a drug overdose and go into the family. Those services are voluntary. So they sign a piece of paper. So it's like police arresting people that just get out. So not an excuse. but it's a horrific set of circumstances. So I knock on the door. You don't let me in. Well, sheriffs can't come. Nobody can come. It's voluntary. And then what happens to social workers who are not invited to stay in CYFD? You keep knocking. Camp out there. I'm tough. They quit going. And you know what happens? I have an injury, or God forbid we have a death. It's horrific. Well, I want that to be mandatory, and we have bipartisan support to do that. I can tell you in 19 and 20 and 21 and 22, I'd have never gotten that out of the House. I don't understand it. There's a body of evidence that says if people want drug addiction treatment, they do better. Okay, I think that's probably true. But if you have a baby in your house, or a toddler, or a teenager that's now selling drugs to every other teenager in the mid-school or high school, that cannot be voluntary. And if it is, I don't know what I could do about it. I can't arrest those families. I can't do anything about it. So mandatory, that's going to pass. I think that's a very important tool. You know what else? It's a public health intervention. Drug abuse and families with these risks and challenges, alcoholism, all drugs, including cannabis, it's a mental health issue. It's a behavioral health issue. That program, I already moved it over to DOH. Well, guess what? DOH, not quite fully funded, but in a lot better shape. So guess what? I can hire people. That's what being accountable. I have power sometimes in places I don't have power over police and judges and schools. So I moved that program over. There were only 9 people in that program. In short order, I'll have 25 navigators and a lot more home visitors already doing it. Changing the database, making it medical record based so that we can figure out what's going on and not going on, including whether they're seeing other professionals, not just a home visitor. All of the above. What else? I am not doing enough for foster families. I don't have enough of them. They don't want to be foster families. It's hard. I make it as hard as possible. Why? Why am I doing that? Pay them more. The only place after we get this raise, which is doubling the amount of money per child, and it's complicated. If kids have other issues and risks, disabilities, you get more money, you should. I want to beat California. New Mexico has resources. If you're willing to stand up for a child in New Mexico, I should take every impediment away. Tax credits. It looks like taking away income tax isn't a big enough benefit. I want the biggest benefits, and I want grandparents raising grandchildren to get treated the same way. That's another risk intersection. And then we created a new division, Family Services, because we don't have enough resource centers. And last, I can't wait a year or 2 or 3 to know what's going on. It's really hard. If you're immersed every day without enough staff, without enough money, and you're getting so many calls, and now we're keeping up with those calls, and you've shifted your focus there as they should, but nothing is mandatory. Shouldn't I be doing oversight and programmatic evaluations all the time in real time by an outsider so that the public trust that we're giving you actual information? I agree. I want other information. Test me, challenge me. I want that to happen, and a financial auditor. So I said the schools don't put money in the classroom. You give me money, you want to know where it is? How about if the auditor tells you where it is every 6 months? And last, people are afraid to complain about what we do poorly because I pay you. You're a foster family. Well, then let's have an authority that can take the complaints. Let's compare them. These things, I think, based on what people complain about today, do the most to create credibility, transparency, funding, mandatory services so that I can keep kids safe.
Governor, speaking of funding, specifically federal funding, we're one of the only states that's basically registered voters blued, entire delegation blue. They kind of started this back with Obama. Obama tended to fund blue states better. Trump did red states. Biden did blue. Are you fearful?
I didn't
because
get a
of
hydrogen hub. Are you sure that's true? I don't
sure?
know. I'm
Are
going to
you-
look at that right now.
Are you concerned about all of our military bases and our 2 world-renowned labs potentially suffering when it comes to federal funding?
I should be worried about all of it. All right. I don't know what they will do or not do. It isn't about being a blue state for the labs. The labs are science-based. What labs in the country do you think are doing the most about doing studies? And we're the first labs in the country to identify the climate crisis and carbon emissions. Sandia Labs. Well, I got a president that doesn't believe in climate science. So do I think that that could be a risk? Of course I do. On the other hand, he seems to be set on escalating our military conflicts. Well, our two labs have a whole lot to do with military readiness and arms. In that regard, I don't agree at all that that's where we ought to be placing our resources. But he only has 2 national labs, 3 really, Carolina Lab, that are really focused on nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction, weapons of war, direct energy, to not have to have the kind of casualties only happening at these labs. So in that regard, maybe they get more. I think it's really every federal dollar is at risk. He made a commitment. That's what, and I'm not challenging that he doesn't want to spend any more federal money because he's going to do huge tax breaks. He's going to do tax breaks for people who do not need them. And how do you pay for those again? Because he got really challenged by his own party and he won't get it through the House unless he pays for them. Well, how do you pay for them? He said he wouldn't touch Social Security or Medicare. So get rid of Medicaid, get rid of education, get rid of climate science, get rid of NIH, get rid of cancer research. That's a bunch right there, I'd have to say. He's certainly hitting the big bucket. So we should be concerned about all of it. And I will fight for all of it. And one of my superpowers is finding a way to find friends in the oddest of places, including in the federal government. And I'm going to do my very best. I have a meeting with the brand new secretary in February about energy and permitting and regulatory reform. And I'm going to be going with bipartisan governors. And I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to keep doing that. That's my job. And I'll do as much of it as this federal government will let me and Congress. So I think presidents do a little of that. I wish they wouldn't. They're a president for all of America. I have zero tolerance for it, and my job is to fight for New Mexico, and I will.
I know that most Democrats are Trump, bad, Democrat, good. And from what I'm hearing, that's how you're saying it. But
Well, I just said that I'm going to
but-
meet with folks
but-
I think they can help us.
But in
Yeah.
chaos, there's opportunity.
Can be.
There can be. For example, he wants to get rid of the Department of Education, but says he would send that money directly to the states. We'll see. Where do you think there is opportunity in this administration in Washington? You were just touching on one, but where do you think there might be
I think a lot
opportunity?
of the economic development is really powerful for us. I have no doubt, that with AI and all the other supercomputing, and already New Mexico's a leading contender. Let's see where that goes. I feel good about it for supercomputing or quantum, which is, again, an area you're going to need those labs. And the people who are advising this president, that's a good thing for New Mexico, really want that as well. So they're going to look to states to do that. The opportunity economic zones were a powerful tool in the last Trump administration. We still utilize those, particularly in rural economic development. Whatever he does, and I said it right after he was elected, I'm in. If it's good for New Mexico, this is what you do. The hard part, I think, for me as a Democrat, isn't that Trump is a Republican, is that I have zero patience for any Democrat or any Republican who lies to me. In any job, anywhere. Tell the truth. I don't have to agree with you. Don't lie to me. Now, he lied to me when I was in Congress. I was in a leadership position. He lied to me during COVID, and I won during COVID. I got the resources. They weren't going to give us any, to your point. I don't know if you remember that, but New Mexico was on this sort of like a C list. It was basically the Santa naughty list. You don't get anything. I fixed that. And I didn't go to war, and I didn't go to the Supreme Court. I found another way. A lot of chaos going on. Somebody somewhere, there's another way. That's my hard part in this administration, is I can never tell what's happening really, because people aren't going to tell me the truth. And I don't think you lead. I'm aggressive. Everyone knows that. I've been aggressive in this interview. I'm passionate. Everybody knows what I think. You should. Don't elect me if I'm not going to tell you what I think. And you don't have to agree with me. And people change my mind all the time. And I make mistakes. And then I try to immediately correct them. Tell the truth. I have no respect for anyone in power who would lie about what they're doing. This is my problem. Now, I can't speak for all the other Democrats and Republicans who in elections with social media seem to lose their mind every 10 seconds. That's both parties. I'm one of those pragmatic Democrats who cares about crime and fairness and equity and economic development. So maybe we need more Republicans and more Democrats that tell the truth. Maybe we need more pragmatic, moderate people, because you can't govern on the fringes or the extremes, which is how New Mexico got into a lot of these problems. And so my message then to New Mexicans, America, let's demand better from our leaders, and then we'll do better as a country.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about, hindsight is always 20/20.
Oh, yeah. Can I get more of that? Can I get someone to give me a crystal
those
ball right now
glasses,
for the next 2 years?
And I know you still have almost 2 years left as governor, but what would you say are you most proud of as governor? And if you had to do over again, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
We don't have enough time for the do differently, right? The do differently is, I think I would have, particularly in 19 and 20, I was a cabinet secretary, and so I wanted cabinet secretaries to have a lot of independence. Sometimes you miss that they have strengths that you're not lifting up, and it may take too long to identify that these are not jobs for everyone, and they may have weaknesses that you didn't help them get addressed. It's not about being draconian, but then you end up in a situation where you've got too much of one and not enough of the other. And, I just assume that everyone knows how to be a cabinet secretary. They're very complicated jobs. And I'm grateful to the people who sacrifice everything. I'm going to tease someone in the room that the viewers can't see, but I love it when a very effective journalist now works for me and says, there's a lot going on up here. I had no idea there was this much work. It's a lot of work, and it should be. It should be work. All right, that would be one. Two, in COVID, we had no data. We are the sickest state in America. We have the fewest hospital beds. So, I hung in there longer, and we have the most independent number of tribes. And tribes will tell you that they believe, and I appreciate it, that I could have eradicated, say, Picarise, that everyone would have died. Lose a whole race. If I'd had any of the data about what we could have done for kids earlier, I'd have done it all. And what those infectious rates are, and even if if I'd known more about asymptomatic carriers and how to deal with that, not to worry about it as much. But I didn't know that. So all I know is that my hospitals are full, and I've got morgue trucks, and I've got people who are being triaged in parking lots at hospitals, and I was flying 2 patients a day, an hour. 2 patients every hour, every day, 7 days a week during the height of that pandemic. And if you go to a hospital now, you got RSV, you got norovirus, and you got COVID everywhere. And so it's still hard, but now I know how to manage it with hospitals differently, and I didn't know. And that hurts my feelings that kids, we slid so far, that it's so hard to go back to school, that kids just gave up and families gave up. That's hard. And if you don't feel bad about that, that you don't deserve to be a governor. Of course I feel bad about that, but we didn't know. Now I know. Now we've got a whole public health structure and a whole hospital structure and a whole medical advisory team. They know. So the next governor's not going to have to guess. And I feel very good about that. I think the legacy of both creating the most financially stable with the biggest savings accounts in America. I'm incredibly proud of staying the course. I took reserves down during COVID to lower than 8%. We were thinking about going to 6%. And for average listeners and viewers, that's not good. It means if something goes wrong, I can't make payroll, right? I can't pay your benefits. I can't do anything. Today, we have the largest reserves, the best savings, the best funds, the best outlook for Moody's. And I'm going to be able to fund universal childcare, universal pre-K. We can keep funding education. So unlike CYFD, this isn't about being angry so that you defund education. This is about making sure money goes to the kids in the classroom. We can figure that out. We can hold people accountable differently, and free college. When I was in DC, we are the talk. Every time I travel, everyone wants this cradle to career. And we moved poverty for kids from 50th to 17th. I know these things work. So let's keep doing them. Let's deal with crime and education outcomes. And what didn't we do in 8 years?
I've dealt with governors and other legislatures around the country, and they all have a pretty big club to use. J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, for example, he'll let you know if he wants something, and he'll get it because he has that club.
Can I have his legislators? Teasing, I'm teasing to all the legislators.
Well, they're more difficult to work with than you would think. John Huntsman and now Spencer Cox in Utah, it's very similar, and also in California, which is a little trickier. But they have the big club that you say that you don't have. So as a New Mexican who says, here are all these problems, here's all these solutions we have for them, here's all this money to get it done, what do I do? What do you tell the average New Mexican who sees that, what do I do?
You just did it for me, and you were so articulate. It's working in other states. Those legislators changed their laws in crime and education, both. It's blue states and red states that have made all these changes and have far better outcomes and are not listed as the most dangerous place in America. So I would suggest to our lawmakers that other Democrats have made these decisions successfully, and other Republicans have made these decisions successfully. And those governors are showing the right results. There is evidence that we are on the right path here. So let your legislator know. Have the courage to be the best. Race to the top. Don't keep failing New Mexicans by being at the bottom.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.